Don't you hate it when you lose those long endings where you don't really know where you went wrong? Well, this can happen to everyone, and in fact, in the position that we have in front, black got totally outplayed in 15 moves. So here we have playing as white, former world champion Magnus Carlsen, playing against Timur Radjabov, who even though nowadays is not a very active player, at the time he was one of the best players in the world. And let's start to understand the position together. Here we have an ending, both sides have two rooks, so we have what we call a double rook ending. And at first sight, some might even argue that black is doing fine, maybe even better, because black is the one having a pass pawn. So that's a pawn that cannot be stopped by any opponent's pawn, but we can definitely notice other things in this position. Black's rook on a2 is blocking the future advance of the pawn. It might even be better on a8 to support the advance. And white has a very active rook on the 7th rank. Very often a rook on the 7th rank can be very dangerous. It is eyeing 2 pawns on the 7th rank and the d6 pawn as well, even though those pawns are defended so far. But both sides have to play accurately in this position, which is actually more complicated than it looks. Black might also have ideas to attack this isolated pawn on c3. That's why here Magnus played the best practical moves to complicate this game. If you look at this game with a chess engine, it will tell you that this position, it is a draw no matter what you play. But when you have two humans playing in a game, anything can happen, and this position has a lot of potential to go wrong. So here Magnus first played the move e5, which is a very strong move as we'll see. First of all, it follows a very basic ending principle, which is to attack pawns. Even though if it offers to trade pawns, there's an idea to capture the pawn on d6. And here black correctly played d takes e5, but just to show you how easily black can go wrong. If black plays the move d5, now we see another important idea of endings, which is to create a pass pawn. But since we have two rooks, in these endings we always need to be alert about attacking ideas. Two rooks can easily deliver a checkmate, and here the move f5 is particularly strong. White has ideas to go f6 or rook to g3 first and then f6, creating an attack against the king. For example, if the king goes to g8, if the king goes to h6, then white will simply grab the pawn f7, or if the king goes to g8, white can start giving checks, driving the king to the h file. And now after f6, there's just this big threat of rook to g7 and rook to h8 mate. And after the move e takes f5, e6 will cost black a rook, because after rook takes and rook takes, now this pawn f7 is pinned, so white is winning a full rook. If black doesn't capture on e6 with the rook, then e7 will follow and white will promote. So d takes e5 was the correct move. What I like about this ending is that black played very well, defended very well, but as we'll see later on, made just one inaccuracy to lose the game. So here after pawn takes and pawn takes, let's notice a change in the position, even though it might look irrelevant. Now the c pawn is a pass pawn because there's no pawn on d6 anymore. And now white also has this idea of rook to f3 and then capture the pawn f7. So now white has an idea to attack the pawn f7 and also black's king. So here Radjabov played the move rook to c5, going for counterplay. This is okay, but I just want to mention that here the move king to g6 looks like a better practical try, because now the king has ideas to run away. Probably Radjabov thought that this position was still very drawish, but this position is actually quite dangerous for black already. So here after rook to c5, now Carlsen played the move rook to g3. Here we really see Carlsen at his best. The position is objectively equal, but he will try to make it as hard as possible for his opponent to draw the game. First gave a check, black correctly played king to f8. If the king goes to the h file, again there are checkmating ideas like rook to d4 and rook to h4. So after king to f8, now Carlsen played rook to f3, and after rook takes e5, rook f takes f7. We see how the king is on the 8th rank. Now there are going to be checkmating ideas. Here after king to e8, most of us would capture the pawn on a7. But let me ask you from a general point of view, if you were white and you had to capture one of these two pawns, which one would give you more winning chances? So for now I can tell you that taking the pawn on a7 is not what Magnus played, because after rook takes and rook takes, first of all here white only has one pass pawn, which is the c pawn, and even though black has a very direct continuation here, which is rook to c5, attacking the pawn on c3, And if white defends the pawn, now the king can get out of the 8th rank, and black should normally be able to hold this position. And in any case, Magnus would probably go for this line if he didn't see anything better at all, because here white has ideas to create a checkmate in attack against the king. So after rook f2 e7, king to f8, and rook to h7, now there's the idea to give a checkmate either by rook to h8 or rook to d8. That's why black played king to g8, and now Magnus gave another check, and after king to f8, rook to b7, king to g8, now Magnus gave another check with the rook on h7, and here Radjabov kept on playing correct defensive moves, king to h8, if king to f8, rook g to c7 is very annoying, planning to give a checkmate with any of the rooks. And after king to h8, rook g to e7, again planning to give a checkmate. Now Radjabov played rook to g5, giving a check, and now there's the idea to defend with rook to g8 if white gives a check. So far black is defending very well, but as we see his position is already quite uncomfortable. So here after rook to c2, correctly going for counterplay against the pawn. Again, Magnus doesn't want to simplify the position, that's why he first defended the pawn on c3. But now finally white is going to win this pawn. The rook on g5 cannot defend the pawn because it is overloaded with the protection of the 8th rank. So here Radjabov found the correct idea, which is to go for counterplay by pushing the a-pawn. And after rook takes e6, finally, after all this long maneuvering, Magnus won this pawn. But as I told you, there's a difference between getting the a-pawn instead of the e6 pawn, which is that now white has these two pass pawns. Nevertheless, Radjabov could have defended this position. First he played the move a4, pushing the pass pawn, and now after rook to a6, in this critical position, he unfortunately made the only mistake in this ending, which is the move rook to g4. So here he had to play rook to a2, supporting the advance of the pawn, and black is in time to create counterplay, so here the game could have continued c4, and now after a3, black has ideas to give a check and push the pawn, and if white wants to get this pawn, now finally black can bring the rook to f5. Now that there's no checkmate threat, now black is getting counterplay against white's pawns. So easier said than done, but black could have held this ending. But instead after rook to c4, now Magnus found a very precise idea to win another pawn by going c4. And here black cannot capture the pawn. If black captures with the pawn on g4, then after rook to a8 we get a checkmate. Or if black captures with the other rook, now white forces these trades and then collects the rook on c4. So now the position is pretty much over for black. White will simply collect this pawn. Here after rook to g7, white traded rooks, and after rook takes c4, this is just a technically winning position, even though black tried a few moves. Magnus is one of the best ending players ever, if not the best, so this was not a hard task for Magnus. After king to f6, king to g2, the king got active, but after rook to a5, here Radjabov played king to e6. If the king goes to d4, one idea might be to bring the king forward and then start pushing the pawn, now that black's king is cut off. But after king to e6, rook to c5, the game continued a few moves, but the result was not in doubt. Here Carlsen played the move c5. If black captures the pawn, then after rook to h5 and king to d6, white will win this pawn ending. One idea will simply be to bring the king forward and then push the f-pawn. And after king to f5, rook to h8, the game continued just a few moves, but with two extra pawns, black cannot hold this position. In this position, black decided to resign because this pawn is just going to move forward and cost black material. Just to give you an example, after king to d7, white can give a check, even though black gets one pawn back. Now the rook stays on the d-file and this king is far away from this pass pawn and there's nothing black can do about it. So I hope that you enjoyed this ending. We started as a double rook ending. We even saw attacking ideas for white. So even in endings, we can get a lot of complicated positions. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel. This will help me a lot. Thanks a lot for watching and see you next time.